What is up? This is the War Dog. Welcome to another episode of Comic Book Theater with my main man, JR. What's going on, JR?
What's going on, War Dog?
Not much. Just sweating it out in the garage in the ATL. Today we have a very special guest, Cara Nicole. What's going on, Cara?
Hey, thank you for having me.
So awesome to have you. Thanks for joining us. John, why don't you tell us what we're going to talk about today and get this rolling?
Right on, man. Yeah, we've got, as always, packed show. We've got a couple of topics that are going to be, they're going to be fairly specialized for this week of news, basically, and then we're also gonna do a little bit of a preview for San Diego Comic-Con with Cara because she is a veteran of San Diego Comic-Con, and we will get to that. But first, let's chat about this Walking Dead 193, the actual ending of basically Robert Kirkman's involvement in The Walking Dead. You guys are familiar if you've been following it on social media. Robert Kirkman drops 193. There was an email leaked that said, yes, this is indeed the very final installment of the Walking Dead comic book. And that's after solicitations for 194 and 195 that appear to be completely fake. They had covers done up for them and the whole 9 yards. So, Cara, I'm going to ask you on this. You are our resident artist expert. Is he an evil genius, or is he kind of a douche nozzle for doing this?
I think it's kind of all of the above. So every time I met him, for some reason, I was always dressed as a zombie. Just accidentally, I happened to be in zombie gear every time I met him. But real nice guy. Walking Dead was not his baby. Like, he wrote it and everything, but Invincible was really his book that he loved. And that also ended this year as well. I think with AMC taking over and starting to do whatever they want, I think that maybe Kirkman might have wanted to put his self back into this book that society had started to take away. Something that I've noticed happens a lot when things go public. Fans start dictating what they want and how they think things should be. And if you don't follow what they think it should be, they'll like rip your throat out like they did with Game of Thrones, if you remember. So I have to wonder if some of that's in there. As far as the previews stating that there were going to be other books, think about that. If you are someone who buys through Diamond, you're probably not going to get your books anyway. So there's that. But yeah, I don't know. Now, if you add up the numbers 193, what do you get?
Well, that would be 13.
That's right. And what is 13?
It's unlucky.
Right? That's like your unlucky, your usual haunted horror number, right? So he could have been going somewhere with that, but he could have just wanted this off his plate to move on, because you know that anytime something happens on that TV show that the fans don't like, he's gonna get a bunch of crap for it.
Oh yeah. Well, and when they killed off Carl in the TV show, he was pretty vocal even that was not really what he wanted. That wasn't the way he would have taken it. And it's obviously not the way he took it in the books either. Anybody who did pick up 193. Now, this is something else about 193 is, and there's wild speculation both ways. We won't know print run information on this book until probably for another month. But we already know there is going to be a second printing of this book, the exact same cover with underneath the image, eye, and all that stuff. It will say second printing. So everything else will be identical about it. But the wild speculation is there's two extremes on the print run. Some people are saying it's going to be a 50,000 or below print run on it. Other people are saying it could be as high as 500,000. Now, 500,000 is an absurd number for a modern book. That's absurd.
Yeah, that sounds like 90s image right there.
It does. But this is the kicker with this one. On the solicitation, Robert Kirkman had them put for the solicitation. Basically, that was refundable. If a comic book shop wanted to order, if they wanted to order 1,000 of them, they could. If they only sold 100 of them, they could return the other 900. So it was returnable, which leads some of us to believe that some people did order more than that they would have normally ordered because the risk is much lower for them. Now, knowing that it's the final issue, there's speculation that there are a couple of shops out there that are setting on several hundred of these books and going the eBay route with them, which, okay, I'm a capitalist. I like when people make money. But again, it kind of just feels a little sketchy. Like I prefer my capitalists, the people who are trying to make this money, I prefer for them to at least be upfront and honest with their customers. You know, it would be like me and Todd saying to somebody, all right, you know, we're going to do 200 episodes. We're going to sell advertisement in 200 episodes to somebody. And at that point, we decide that we're going to bump it at 193. And yeah, okay, we'll refund you for the last 7. But like you say, it just kind of feels shady. Am I the only one that feels that way?
I see where you're coming from. And honestly, what I'm about to say, I don't think that they're going to do this, but I think it's a great idea from an artist perspective. I think, how many pages did you say this book was?
71.
That's right, which means you could break that up easily into 3 issues, have multiple covers, have sketch covers, have variants. A lot of stores, what they do is they'll hire their own artists and they will work and request from the original publisher and the original creator the ability to create a variant cover. So now you can break this book into 3 different books up. And if you're a comic book store owner, you could be like, hey, I want you over here to do a variant cover. And now you're going to sell issue 195 with a special store-owned variant cover. Like I said, I don't think that they're going to do that, but think about it. On the capitalist side, you could do that.
You could. Yeah, I could see that. I could see them doing something like that. I could even, and now the 192 second print came out this week as well, and that was, I like that cover a lot better. It's the essentially Rick in a portrait only with a red background. I believe that will be one of the more iconic covers from the run, just because of the significance of it. You know, I don't know. Like I say, I could see that. Todd, how do you feel on this, man? You're a guy who's got a Kickstarter book that's getting ready to get packaged up and sent out and stuff. How do you feel about them with the fake solicitations and stuff?
I don't know. I think Robert Kirkman made the right decision. We talked about it earlier, just that, you know, the show was kind of morphing into something that was a little bit different than the book. The show's coming to an end. You got to imagine that the book was close to coming to an end as well. It's unfortunate that 194 and 195 were listed, but, you know, this is what is kind of missing sometimes in comic books, is just some of this excitement, some of this crazy, you know, everything. You kind of expect things. So when things happen, or when there's a short run and you end up picking up the book and it's worth something because not so many were printed, it's kind of cool. So I think this was kind of cool. I didn't end up getting a copy of it, you know, but I don't know what the print run is, so I'm not going to get caught up in the hype and go out and spend mad money on it. And I figure in a few years it's probably going to be worth less. I mean, the most interesting thing is, what is the Walking Dead comic books that were hot in the past going to be worth going forward? Like Walking Dead 1, some of these first appearances that were selling for thousands of dollars. Now what are they going to be worth? I mean, the series is over.
That's a good question. I think that they will most likely hold their value because syndication happens with TV. I don't think The Walking Dead. I think you may see a thinning out of The Walking Dead as far as they have Fear the Walking Dead and The Walking Dead both on AMC. Eventually, that The Walking Dead ends, and when it ends, they'll just throw them out into syndication. I really think that it's one of those cultural shows, maybe not on par with and this is going to date me. I'm going to sound so old here, like the Andy Griffith Show or MASH or the Brady Bunch. Those kind of shows that are and they're in syndication. They'll be running. You can find one of those three shows running at all times somewhere on television. I think that this one will end up in syndication. But now, Kara, I'm going to ask you here too, because I think there is something to be said for the TV show morphing away from what Robert Kirkman wanted, as an artist and being creatively fulfilled. That's a big deal to a writer and an artist, both, if they're not seeing their vision played out on the screen or on the page. You think that might have played a little bit more into it than what we're really giving credit for?
I think it could have. I think that, once big business owns something like that, your name can be on it, but you don't have any pull anymore. You don't have any say. I mean, the fact that they killed Carl on the show, I think that was a power move, and I think it was a stupid power move. I think
I would agree.
Like they were invincible and they could do whatever they wanted, and they tried it and they failed.
I agree. And the reason that I will say that I agree with that is I have 24 episodes on my DVR of The Walking Dead that I have not watched. And what that means is, since they killed Carl off, I didn't feel any more of an emotional connection with the show. I'm a father, okay? The reason that I could connect with somebody like Rick is he was willing to do whatever it took to get back to his family, to protect his family, those kind of things. Those are things that are kind of innate in parents that you kind of connect with that. So killing off Carl, well, Judith, there's been no way to have any kind of emotional connection to Judith whatsoever. She's basically an infant. She and completely MIA from the show. So that makes Rick just some random dude now. No longer do I feel a connection to Rick. And so, yeah, I just kind of stopped watching it. Like I say, it's still on my DVR. It's yet to be determined whether I feel like ever picking them up again or not. But it will probably most likely be somebody else in my family saying, hey, let's watch these and give them a chance. And then I might sit down and watch them with them.
I stopped watching at the same time, and I met him. He was a lovely boy. He had a good family. Most of the parents that I met of the actors on the show, the child actors, they were very, very protective of their children, and they did a really good job at making sure that their kids were not exploited and taken care of. Also, if you notice on the show, when they did remove his eye patch, the CGI was terrible. I mean, where is this money going to where they have so many actors that are incredibly demanding of their money that they don't have any money to put into the production quality of the show, to where now they can't have everyone in every episode because they've overcast. A lot of those actors were getting a little greedy, and they just didn't have the money to keep the show going and looking good. Their walkers started out fantastic, and later on they kind of look like the Deadites from the Evil Dead musical.
Yikes. Yeah,
Harsh,
that's not.
I'm saying, like.
Yeah. I mean, and it feels like it's more, I don't know, it became much less about Rick and Carl by the time they got to Terminus. When they got to Terminus, that's when you really started seeing this branching off, and not all the main characters showing up in every show. They had to branch out and do half this show, half that show. And it just it felt convoluted. And then you add in the Saviors and Negan, and it gets even more convoluted. So it may be 3 shows before you see anybody that you actually care about. It gets kind of rough. But the other thing too is, and we kind of talked about this before we got on the podcast here, there's a law of diminishing returns with zombies. Mm-hmm. And Cara, you're the one that said it before. I'm going to let you say it again because I think you've got the right way to say it. What's the problem with zombies long term?
Oh, that rigor mortis should kick in. They should decay and rot. Body parts should be falling off. And all of this eating, where is this going? They should actually be consuming until they possibly explode at some point. Like there's no, you actually started talking about it with World War Z that, the zombies can't handle certain types of climates. Mm-hmm. I mean, really, The Walking Dead should have ended with the new civilization up in Alaska.
Yeah. Well, and that's exactly it. With World War Z, the book, they talked about the ways different countries and different cultures combat the zombie apocalypse. And the book is much different from the movie. The book itself would not have made a good movie. And that's why whenever it first said they were going to be a movie starring Brad Pitt, I rolled my eyes. I'm like, there's no way they can make this movie, make it with somebody like Brad Pitt, and either A, do the book justice, or B, give him enough screen time to make it worth paying him for. But anyway, in Canada, they simply moved further north so that as the zombies came towards them, they would freeze overnight, go out and take care of the zombies, no big deal. And so, at that point, it becomes more of a waiting game. Just make it through long enough so that decay starts to happen, so that they start to fall apart. Those kind of things start to happen. You just kind of let nature take its course, and then mankind starts to flourish again, that kind of thing. That's kind of the way, that's not really the way that Kirkman ended it in 193, but it did sound like, with it being a 71-page book, that 6 of those pages was a letter dedicated to Walking Dead fans. And that basically Robert Kirkman was basically not feeling it anymore for The Walking Dead. He was having kind of creative problems as far as continuing to tell interesting stories and finding new ways to tell those interesting stories. That's why they did, I'm going to do a little bit of spoiler here, guys. Just everybody know, if you're on social media, you know already anyway. Essentially, the story is a flash forward like 20 years to Carl, and only wrapping up 3 or 4 storylines, and everybody else is kind of left out in the wind. There's no real closure there. So, I can see where some people like the happy ending that Carl survived and that kind of thing. But other people are going to be upset because Carl was not the focus of their fandom. They were, I read one comment where a lady said, I just hope, who was it? It was Jesus and Aaron are able to ride off on their motorcycle into the sunset or whatever. And I'm like, well, if that's who you are a fan of, guess what? You didn't get that ending. You have no idea what happened to them. So, I can see people being both ways on this. As far as I can see, some people being really upset that they didn't get any closure, and I can see other people being super happy that Carl is not old man Carl, but is adult Carl.
Well, there is no closure in life. You always move on. You either live or die, even if living is boring. The whole focus of The Walking Dead is Carl. It is Rick caring for his son through this tragedy of the world and how life finds a way. You will always move on. And Carl being his son, and Carl having his own child, and Carl's survival is the key to the entire idea behind it, that life moves on. He's Rick's son. You will die for your child. You will do anything for your child so that your child can live on, and through your child, you live on.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Now,
yeah, that's a great point.
The other thing about that, you mentioned that's not how life is. Some people were giving Kirkman grief about having a brand new character that's of basically no significance other than the fact that he's the one that shoots Rick, be the one to shoot Rick. There was a lot of backlash. I heard a lot of people saying things like, Rick doesn't deserve a death like that. They're basically wanting him to be burned at the stake or something, or have this just massive horde of zombies and he kills everyone except for the last one that bites him, or something grandiose. And I actually liked the idea that this guy, who was a major character, the focal point of the entire book, have a very plain, ordinary, not dumb luck, but a really basic death of this petulant child who's not fully trained with a weapon, walks in, decides he's mad at you, and shoots you in the chest, and you're dead. That definitely does sound more like something that in that world would be a possibility of happening. So I'm with the realism there, as far as it. Not everybody is going to get that grand exit,
Look at Steve Irwin. Everyone expected him to be eaten by a shark or some crazy thing, and he got stung by a stingray. We pet them at the zoo. He gets stung by a stingray, and that's how he died. And I think that you're onto something with Rick having a softer death. That, it was something that did happen in his own community. He was killed by a child. He wasn't killed by a horde of zombies. He did not go out in a blaze of glory.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you know what, though? That also proves that you don't have to go out in a blaze of glory either. Because, again, more spoiler stuff for 193. Basically, 193 is ended that Carl is reading The Walking Dead to his daughter. That basically he's recounting Rick's life to Rick's granddaughter, and it's okay. He's still the hero. He didn't go out in a blaze of glory, but he's still the hero of the story. He's still the guy that Carl is basically crediting with civilization being reborn under. And that, like you say, that's still very heroic. Doesn't matter that that history is littered with great people, historic figures that ended very, very plainly. It's part of it. Actually, and that's one thing I just thought of this. This is a perfect segue, because we want to talk some about San Diego Comic-Con as well. And as I was looking through the itinerary for San Diego Comic-Con 2019, I noticed that Robert Kirkman is scheduled to do his visit with the fans, and of course they list Walking Dead and Oblivion Song, and my brain just went blank on the other title.
Invincible.
Thank you, Todd. You're earning your money this week, Todd. You're earning your money, man.
That's what I'm here for.
Right on. Checks in the mail, right?
Oh, yeah. I just got to find where the mute button is.
Hey, you're winning the war this week on the mute button.
I know.
That's awesome. Anyway, I expect that that Q&A session to be rather lively this year. Cara, you're a veteran of San Diego Comic-Con. For anybody who's not aware, we've been referring to you as Cara Nicole because that's who you are, but you're also AZ Powergirl. You go and you are a professional cosplayer as well as a colorist. You're a woman who wears many hats. What's your earliest memory of San Diego Comic-Con? Did you go as a fan, or were you already cosplaying when you went?
So I was already cosplaying for a very short time, and a lot of people were asking if I was going to go, and it was expensive. San Diego is very expensive, so I looked for a job, and I got hired by Marvel Comics. And that was back when Captain America had come out, and Apple was pushing their iPhone cases. So that's what I did. I wore their costumes that literally came from Party City, and I passed out these phone cases in exchange for people taking pictures and hashtagging them and stuff. And so that's what I did my first year. And the second year I worked for Big City Comics, and I wore all their costumes. And I've worked for Crusadel Productions doing their thing. I had a couple of years where I did signings at a booth. I had a couple of years where I just did whatever I wanted. And this year I'm going back to work with Big City Comics again. Right on.
So when you're working with them, obviously, like you said, you of a variety of different costumes and a variety of different quality of costumes are provided for you there. When you're working it that way, do you ever get enough time off to actually enjoy it, or are you there just working?
You're just working. And the thing is I've had my years of just going to enjoy it, and everyone gets excited. Oh, can you pick me up? No, I cannot just pick you. Can you stop by absolutely not. So I'm going to tell you so you get it. Do you like standing in line?
No, I'm
Yeah,
too
I
fat
like
for
it.
standing in line.
Okay, now imagine standing in line and then standing in line again. And then when you get hungry, you go to a restaurant where you get to stand in line for 45 minutes. Eventually they seat you. And then when you finally get seated, they tell you they don't have any food.
That sucks.
That's
terrible.
And that's what it is. I am not even kidding. Like, why did you seat me? I will kill you. So people get there and they always have these lotteries now, and it's getting easier, but most people are there because they either want to experience it, which is like, do you want to experience going and like hanging out at the doctor's office? Like, no, this sucks. There's people that want to go and they want to get all of the exclusives and all those fun things. So this is how you do that. You get up at 1:00 in the morning and you take your shuttle bus from your $800, $69 a night hotel that you share with 6 people. And you take their bus and you get down there at 1 a.m. and you stand in line. And then at 8 a.m. they open up the doors and you run and you book it and you haul ass across that hall and you get in another line. So it doesn't matter where you were in the line. If someone's faster, they just beat you. And you got to pick your lines based on what you want to get. So you want to go to the Funko booth and you want to go to the Transformers booth and you want to go over here to that other booth. So you got to get in that line and then you wait and then you get a ticket and you got to hit all the lines that you can get. And then when the hall opens at 10, you got to book it down there and you take your ticket and you get in line at the Funko booth.
Man.
That sounds like Disney.
And you give them your ticket and then they will allow you to purchase one of the things that you wanted. And all the artists that used to sign stuff for free and do free sketches, now they're charging now because they know it's all getting flipped on eBay.
It is.
So, oh, and I will tell you, you are so crowded. security is constantly yelling at you, move it along, move it along, move it along. It's like, you can't move anywhere. You know, if you need personal space, this is not the place for you. If you're feeling congested, go to small press, because as crowded as it is over here, there is nobody, because they will ask you, do you like to read? And most people say, no, I don't really like to read. I just watch the movies. So the people that go to small press and spend $500 on a 6-foot table to literally have sewage fall from their ceiling, because that happened to the booth that I was working at one year. Nobody goes down those aisles. So unless you're along the wall or on a corner, nobody's talking to you. No one is going down those aisles. Man. So those people spend thousands and thousands of dollars just to be able to get a space at San Diego Comic-Con to make like nothing.
Yeah, that does not paint that rosy picture that some of these entertainment outlets paint it as. I can imagine that's probably a lot more closer to what I would experience, because honestly, I'm not winning a foot race anywhere these days. The only way I win the foot race is if I can maybe intimidate somebody into like going slower than I did, or maybe tackle them to the ground. That might work. But you know, I have to get them in the phone booth. If they're in a marathon mode, they're gonna outpace me. And that's part of it. But yeah, standing in line does not sound like anything fun. I know it's called San Diego Comic-Con, but it does sound like, and Todd, correct me if I'm wrong here, my impression has been for several years that it's a pop culture con. Comics they're not even taking a back seat. They're lucky if they're in the trailer behind the car anymore. Todd, is that the impression you're getting from Comic-Con these days?
Well, didn't like 2 years ago Mile High Comics stop going to San Diego Comic-Con?
I was to bring that up, but I wasn't sure if I should. Yeah, they got mad because they're not making their money. I know J Company is still doing their booth. Mm-hmm. But they're predominantly online. Mile High actually has multiple locations. So Mile High is like, no, this is not worth it for me. There's really not a lot of comics. Even as a cosplayer, like the majority cons I go to, I'm a guest or I buy space, and you can't get in to San Diego.
Right.
Well, the price.
Some of the biggest cosplayers out there asking me to get them a ticket.
That's crazy that they would be that, for lack of a better way of me saying it, it feels like they're being very uppity about it. And I get that they probably make truckloads of money from all the movie studios and stuff like that, but there is a part of me that the old saying goes, dance with the girl that what brought you. You know, it's San Diego Comic-Con. If you don't have the comics at first, it never does develop into, the juggernaut that it is.
What do they?
Go ahead.
What do they charge you for a booth?
So a small press table is about $500. Artist Alley is 3 feet. You share a table, you get 3 feet, and you have to be selected. And I don't believe that they cost anything. Once you start getting into your booths, one guy told me he had an end cap in a decent area and it was $8,000.
Wow. Yeah, that's insane.
The booth that I'm working is, I want to say about 4,000. And it's a corner, it's a 10 by 10.
Man.
So is that just marketing expense?
Yeah. And the thing is there's a lot of booths that are like, well, I don't make my money. I mean, I know a booth that does make their money because they do CGC grading. Um, I can't really speak for cosplayers. I know that I would be okay if I was allowed to buy a booth, but even just getting in to buy a booth is incredibly expensive and complicated. Someone has to die before you could get in. And like, I applied for small press and they looked at me like I was trash. And they had all of these rules like, oh, your book has to do this, 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 and this, and this, and it can't be this, that, and the other. And I'm like, okay, well, so that's something that, you know, being a cosplayer, it's almost like there's no place for you.
They want you to spend money to get the ticket to go in, and then just be window dressing for everything else, basically.
Yeah. I mean, and I don't buy my ticket. I get professional badges because I am an industry professional. So I apply for that. I get that. And this year I'm actually doing a panel.
That's cool. What panel are you doing this year? Just so we know.
I'm working with another group on the over 30 cosplay panel. It was the one that we did in Branson.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, that was a good one. And my wife, she's been a trooper with these local cons that we've been going to. We're going to go to another one here in Springfield.
Oh,
What? No. See, it's the wrong Springfield.
Springfield, Illinois?
Yeah, I'm not going to Springfield. That's 5 hours away from me, one way for a single day.
Already happened.
Yeah. Well, VisionCon happened. There's one here locally called RubalCon. I'll give them a plug if somebody's local. They want to show up on the 20th of this month at Relics Flea Market and Event Center. They've got an event center to the side of it. Super cheap entry fee, and they have cosplay contests and stuff like that, but they have an artist alley. But it's an old school comic book show. As far as you're going to have toy and comic book vendors, you're going to have an artist alley with local talent, local artists showing up that are mainly from Southwest Missouri over into part of Oklahoma, and they'll come in and be an artist alley for commission work and showing off their independent books and stuff like that. But as far as, there's not really a place for celebrities, either local or regional or national, any of that. They are just, it simply is what it is. That's one of the ways that he claims to be able to keep entry fees low and table costs low for vendors and stuff like that. But it's a neat place, and very different from Branson and very different from Vision.
Gotcha.
But I will say, I've been talking with Eric, who does the con in Springfield, Illinois. I don't know for sure, but I got my fingers crossed. Eventually, he's going to put a con in Springfield, Missouri, too. It's just a matter of how much I can twist his arm. So yeah, that would. And by the way, I'm sure if he hasn't said it, if he does a con somewhere else, I'm sure he'll be glad to have you as a guest there too. So we've kind of touched on San Diego Comic-Con some here. We've talked about The Walking Dead. I'm curious to know, I know you've got some other things in the works as well. You've got a book that you're working on? Like a book? What's that?
I've got multiple books I'm working on. So my comic book project is called Fire Bitch, and it's about a like an Instagram model who gets accidentally transported to an alien world and develops fire powers. So that's really cool. I don't want to spoil too much, but if you have any questions, that would be a little easier because I don't want to just...
Okay. No, okay. So I'm trying to figure, it feels like that's something that goes from something that's very, I don't want to say ordinary, because being an Instagram model is not ordinary. Todd or I are ordinary. We could not, Todd, are you an Instagram model on your off time?
Actually, yes, I am.
I figured. I could feel it in you.
He's a hand
Yeah.
model. He's a hand model on Instagram.
I'm just a goofball.
But it sounds like going from an Instagram model and then being transported to an alien world. That sounds like a very wild transition from one way to the other. Are they related in any way, shape, or form, or is it just by happenstance that the model ends up there, or is that giving away too much?
It was not intended that she be there.
Okay. So it was a mistake.
Yes.
Okay. And I'm not gonna press.
But now she has to become the hero that these people in this alien world need.
Okay, I dig that's one of those where, and I'm trying to remember. There are several different ways that hero stories work, where it's like a birthright of a hero, where a hero is kind of it's herodom is forced upon them. That's kind of what this sounds like. Is that she's got to be a hero, and if she's not, then basically everybody's screwed.
Well, and she has to make that choice. She's very shallow. She's very, I mean, I really went like balls to the wall with writing this. Like, I wanted her to not be liked. I wanted her to be incredibly shallow. I wanted her to be very self-absorbed. You know, everything that our society sees, from cosplay models, Instagram girls, they call them insta-hoes, you know, girls that get thousands of likes just for showing their butt. That girl, not actually that girl. I'm not saying that these girls are like that, but Fire Bitch is the epitome of society's perception of those women. Does that make sense? So her behavior and her thoughts are all what people think those girls behave like and think like and act like.
Yeah, so there's got to be some so it gives you a lot of area to develop her into a stronger, more important character. She starts out shallow, but as the story progresses, you learn a little bit more about this. And it's probably the same thing, like if you actually got to know these Instagram models, you might actually see that there's layers to their personalities rather than just, you know, being a pretty face on Instagram.
Except she doesn't actually have that depth. She has to develop it. She has to go through this entire situation for her to start grasping what's important.
So it's almost
important, but they still are. But how do you translate that? So now, instead of going for online likes and selfies, now it's real. Now these people that are supporting her, they're real, they're in her face, they're raw. You know, now you're actually doing something, and these people really like you. They're not liking you because of a picture you took. They're liking you because of what you're capable of. So it's kind of her developing that, yes, she is a good person and she does have these abilities, but it still has a lot of the unfortunate downside of our society as far as what she likes and what she's into and what's important to her. So she does end up with a sidekick, I will tell you that. And this woman's just rude. She's rude. I will tell you also that we're going to have a black bag copy that'll have additional content that will be of an adult nature.
Okay. Yeah, that, you know, and I enjoy complex characters like that, even if at first they're not complex. It almost sounds like the best way what I'm hearing from you, the best way I translate in my mind is kind of like a Guy Gardner type character where at first basically just not a very likable person to begin with, but grows into the hero that they need to be. Is that kind of the way that is?
It is, but she doesn't suddenly get intelligent. Like,
Right.
she's your typical dumb bitch. So she still has that. Like, she still has what she believes is important to our life and her society. You know what I mean? You ever like go through people's Facebook pages or Instagram pages and you're like, is this really important to you? Is this makeup palette that important to you? You see like all this stuff on YouTube with the big YouTubers, what's important to them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, those things do matter to those people. And a lot of us think, oh, that's stupid. Like, why is having a new pop socket important to you? That doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things, but it is important to them. So it's kind of translating those shallow importances into a larger spectrum. Like, you can still be shallow and think that your teddy bear or your pop socket or, you know, the new Jeffree Star eyeshadow palette's important. Like, that means something to you, but you can still save the world.
Yeah, I get that. Well, like we were saying before, there are so many hero archetypes out there as far as they have to be the biggest, the strongest, the fastest, the smartest. Sometimes it doesn't take those people. Sometimes history in real life records that those people are not always, I mean, by all accounts, and this, I hate to get political at all. By all accounts, Jimmy Carter, very nice man, very honorable man, not a great president.
I love how you went with Jimmy Carter. I love how you said, I don't want to get political, but Jimmy Carter. That was cool.
Look,
yeah,
well,
that's a safe bet.
Well, I mean, okay, look. He's old enough that most of our listeners didn't live through him. I'm not old enough where I have actual memories of him, but I can look back historically and say, yeah, there's a reason why he was a one-term president. Even though he does Habitats for Humanity, so that makes him a cool dude right there. He a very well thought of person. Everybody who's come in contact with him personally just raves about what kind of an actual person he is, but just didn't make a very good president. He wasn't either he wasn't cutthroat enough or wasn't dirty enough or whatever it takes to be president. He didn't have that. He had a lot of other great qualities, didn't have that. So yeah, I mean that makes total sense to me that somebody could be shallow and very, very superficial and still see the problem that presents itself and go save the world.
Yeah.
So that's I like that concept. That's a cool concept. And that book is going to Kickstarter at some point. Is that correct?
It's pretty much all written. I mean, you're always going in and making tweaks and changes, but the art has been started and I've started coloring. We've gotten some things back from the flatter, so it's definitely in process. And the other book that I'm working on is Confessions of a Cosplay Diva.
Is that a comic book or a novel?
It's more of a journal. And I do my books comic book size because I work predominantly in comic books. So even my photo books are all comic book size. They're done like artist sketchbooks. So this is going to be done in a similar way, but it's going to have a lot more writing than photos. We're also going to throw some sequential art in there. Stories that I have from my cosplay career, we're going to put some of those into sequential form. So it'll be kind of like a big old storytelling scrapbook.
That's cool. Now, and I know that on your social media, you've had some Q&A sessions where you've had people ask you, and you're like, and you're upfront with folks. You're very transparent with your fans, especially whenever you're asking for them to ask you questions that might go into a book like that. Are there any questions that they've asked of you that you scratch your head and you're like, I can't believe somebody asked me that?
Yes, and it's always the same questions. What's your favorite costume? What was your first costume? How did you get started? Read my other 3 books. It's all in there.
All
Like
there.
those are the same questions that every single person asks me, and I won't answer them anymore. I'm like, look, you can Google me and find the answer to any of those questions. You're the same people asking the same damn questions. Stop. Dig deep. What do you really want to know? Do you care for me to tell you again that Power Girl was my first cosplay? Like, how many times do you need to hear it? Just, I'll tell you once and put it on repeat, okay?
Right.
There's things that are so much more fascinating than how long does it take you to make a cosplay? I don't know. How long does it take you to make a bundt cake versus a pot of spaghetti? They're different things. Every costume is different. Every experience is different. Like, they ask these vague general questions, and it's the same questions, the same cosplayer. Would you pay to buy a book with the answers to those questions? No, you wouldn't. What would you pay to learn?
You know what? I actually have a question that I don't believe has been asked of you. You occasionally dabble in firearms, like going to the shooting range. What's your favorite gun that you've ever shot?
Okay, I used to have a sawed-off shotgun.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yes, but I gave it up to an ex. He had given it to me, and then I had it custom painted for him.
I will tell you, my father has a Taurus Raging Bull, which is, it shoots 45 ACP, but also shoots 410 shotgun shells, the very small shotgun shells. That's a lot of fun to shoot because it's a little barrel. That's the length of the barrel, right about right there. And so, those 410s, when they get loaded in, they're halfway down the barrel already. And that's a lot of fun. Whereas, unfortunately, I've shot a 20 gauge shotgun that is not very much fun. It's all in, and even then, that's not as bad as a 10 gauge. But I've never shot one of those. That would be one that my father tells me is not very pleasant to shoot.
Now,
But
have you ever dabbled in black powder?
yes, absolutely.
It's fun.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. In Missouri, we have a black powder or primitive arms hunting season.
Oh, wow.
And so, yeah, it's something where whenever I was much younger, my father and I went, and yeah, it is really fun to have. You got one shot, better make it count. If you're hunting, you better make it count. Well, the other thing too is with it being a ball, it's not spinning like a bullet would. Eventually, it just tails off. It drops off. It doesn't have near the range that especially somebody like me that was younger. I was probably 12 or 13 at the time. I thought it would have much further range, and no, it didn't even make. My dad's like, yeah, you can take a shot at it, but you're not going to reach out to that deer from where we're setting. He said, but go ahead and take your shot. See, prove. Sometimes when you're a kid, you don't believe adults. Adults don't know what they're talking about. Now Todd is a gun enthusiast too, aren't you, Todd?
I have a gun, but I never shot it. I bought it. And there's a shooting range right down the street, but I'm afraid to clean it.
Oh no, dude, no.
I hear you, man. I was out of town, and then there was on the news, like 2 blocks from my house, some guy was cleaning his gun and shot his kid.
Oh, it bothers me when people aren't safe with their guns. It really, really bothers me because there is this mentality that people with guns are inherently unsafe, and when those people are unsafe, they're just fomenting that. And I don't like that, because most of the people I know who have guns are safe. Like, that's always been my experience. So
I just have a gun to have a gun, just so I can say that I have a gun.
well, you're being a transplant from Buffalo to Atlanta, Georgia, you had to do something to bolster your Southerner credit, and having a gun is one of those things.
Yep, a gun and a barbecue grill.
There you go. All right, Todd, you have any questions that are burning questions for you for Cara that are not those generic questions?
Actually, just probably the last question that I have is, who's doing the artwork on your book? I'm curious.
So Albert Trujillo does the lines, and I do the colors.
Oh, okay. Because I know you've done stuff with Antonio D. I see, like I know you did some pictures with him.
I didn't know you knew him.
Oh yeah, Antonio. I bought a few of his Changeling books. He's a cool guy. We hope to get him on here one of these times too.
You know what? I will bug him.
Yeah.
I'll be like, hey, so do you follow him on Facebook?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Keep an eye, and you'll see us like go at it. And there's been times people are like afraid. They're like, oh, I thought you guys hated each other. No, he's like one of my best friends. I mean, we hang out usually Sunday nights. We get together and, hit a taco stand, and we actually all have matching No Ma'am t-shirts from Married with Children.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, we're pretty tight, and he's a cool guy.
Oh yeah, he's in the corner with us, and we proudly support his work there with Changeling, as far as and that's, we always extend that to anybody who's doing Kickstarter work on indie books, to let us know how we can help out with that kind of thing, whether it's coming on the podcast and doing that, or whether it's throwing the link to the Kickstarter in the group there at the Collector's Corner or whatever. Yeah, we love doing that. And Antonio he wasn't the first, but he was one of the first to approach us and say, hey, can I throw a link on the Collector's Corner? And we were like, absolutely, man, knock it out, do your thing. And even then, one thing, I don't know if you're aware of this, Cara, or not, when the Collector's Corner did Steam Age Wasteland, which is our indie book, it was only pinup. Mm-hmm. No writing. There was a prologue on the first page, and after that, all pinup art. Antonio actually stepped in on extremely short notice. We had an artist commit, and then realized that they probably should not have committed, and back out on us. But they didn't back. They backed out on us with like 3 weeks before we went to press. Mm-hmm. And this was not a Kickstarter. We look back on that and think we probably should have went the Kickstarter route anyway. But we approached Antonio, and he said, yeah, I got you covered. And he went in like 3 days, had a really nice pinup done for us. And it was one of the final 3 that we had voted on to possibly be the centerfold in the book. That's what kind of work, so we enjoy his work quite a bit. Absolutely.
Right on. Yeah, he's one of my favorite people. We travel together whenever we can, and really cool dude. And we had a couple of covers for the Changeling. Alfred and I did an art piece for the Into the Lungs of Hell, and I did a collector's card and a couple of, for issue 4 I did 3 covers, and then there was the collector's card, and then there was an exclusive for a con, and then Phoenix there was a cosplay cover for the Phoenix Con book, which is actually the art book, and then there was also a Las Vegas cover as well. So I was not a part of this last Kickstarter, but I did have some other books available as well. So yeah, no, cool dude. I don't know if you saw the first run of the Changeling ones that I did, but part of that with the collector's card and the Albuquerque cover is I'm like naked, just covered in blood. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, I think I seen the 3 covers that you did. You did a great job.
Well, the first 3 were in the shorts, and then I redid the costume because the horns I made were just too bulky and heavy. So I made something that was a little more user-friendly that I could wear to a convention. And so I did that, and then I created a new costume, and he's been talking about possibly making that a canon costume.
Nice.
With the long gloves with no fingers, and then the black body suit thing. And I had to make that in a way that I could wear the tail with it. So it's actually 3 pieces, but it looks like it's 1 piece.
So okay. So we're approaching the hour mark. I don't want to cut you off or anything, but first thing is, when do you think your book's coming out? Because it sounds interesting. And when do you think the Kickstarter? When can we expect the Kickstarter?
Fire Bitch, I'm hoping by the end of the year. That's going to be 2 issues. So
Okay.
The first issue will definitely be out before the end of the year. And then Confessions of a Cosplay Diva, I'm hoping over the next couple of months. I have a project that I am finishing up right now through a third party that I was brought in to do. And then, so, I mean, I've been really just cranking it out. I would say the next couple of months, look for Confessions of a Cosplay Diva.
Very cool. John, you got any final thoughts on this before we close this one out?
Man, final thoughts for me this week. Just a couple. One is, don't fall into the fear of missing out. And this goes for Walking Dead 183. It goes for future issues. It goes for past issues. If you're a comic book collector, you fall into the fear of missing out, you're going to pay the tax for that book. If you're patient and wait, there's almost always a deal to be had, especially on modern books. Also, hopefully Eric is listening to the podcast this week. Bring a comic book convention to Springfield, Missouri, not just Springfield, Illinois. And if you bring Cara with you, we will dig that too. That will be awesome too. Those are my final thoughts, Todd. Cara, do you have any final thoughts for us this week?
No, just keep up on all my stuff. I always have something new going on. And yeah, that's it. Stay tuned for more.
Absolutely, guys. Search AZ Powergirl on all social media platforms. That's how you will find Cara. I will say this: there are imitators out there, but never duplicators. Todd, what are your final thoughts?
It's 1 a.m. here in Atlanta right now, so my thoughts are not very clear at this moment. I think my pillow is my only thought at this moment.
Counting sheep. Todd wants to go count sheep.
Is this you want this, huh?
Yes, exactly. I got my blankie right here waiting for me.
That's amazing. That's great.
All right, so we're going to wrap this one up. Thanks, Cara, for joining us. We really appreciate it. And John, as always, peace out, brother. All right, take care.